Attention denizens of planet Earth.
Broadcasting from Carbondale in Southern Illinois' premier comic shop. And now your host, superlative shaman of comic book knowledge, Dan Brown. Flash the match signal in case of emergency for your host with the most on his mind, Matt Morton. Watch out, criminals. There's nothing funny to him about truth, justice, and the American way. It's Commander Harris himself, Scott Reed. And tuning in from the far reaches of no man's land, the mad scientist dream leader, Mike Ho. This is Campus Comics Cast.
All right, hey there. Welcome to the latest episode of the Campus Comics Cast. Just letting everybody know that the store is open. We're open at 816 East Main Street, Suite B in Carbondale. And we're open regular hours again, Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 6. Be sure to come by. We just ask that everybody, wear masks right now, kind of socially distances. That's just, what they're telling us, in the state. So, it's important that we do that and try to keep everybody safe and healthy. This is Dan Brown, and I'm joined this time by
Scott Reed,
Tyler Wright,
and Mike Atchison.
Okay. And so we've got some news and some reviews and things to go over this time. I think we're going to start off talking about some of the news that's been developing at DC.
Hey Dan, I'm sorry I forgot about this while we were doing the what we were going to talk about. But
oh yeah,
August 29th, right? Saturday, August 29th.
Oh right.
Mike is doing another mini-con slash swap meet / the whole store. Set of stores there is going to have just multiple events that are going on.
Yeah,
so I know that I'll be there. Yeah, I'll be there. Tyler's going to be set up there with some stuff for sale. I'll be selling stuff. So plus all the regular inventory that the store has, and hopefully a new batch of posters.
Yeah, and I believe that's also Record Store Day. We have Plaza Records right down from us, so they'll be observing that. So if you want to come out for that. But right now we're going to talk about some of the crazy news coming out of DC. Towards the end of last week, apparently on Jim Lee's birthday, they announced a pretty big wave of layoffs. And this isn't just DC. This is HBO. A lot of Warner Brothers, positions are being eliminated. There's a big chunk of, longtime DC employees that are gone or going to be soon. There's a lot of rumors going around, a lot of, Chicken Little kind of stuff going on. But again, it looks like some of this is, pretty real. Mm-hmm. So kind of the probably most credible source of information that I've been able to find is this interview with Jim Lee on The Hollywood Reporter. It turns out they were supposed to be interviewing him about the upcoming DC Fandom, which is their online convention that is taking place this Saturday as we're recording this. I think it's at the 22nd or?
Yeah, 22nd.
Saturday, August 22nd. So that's their online sort of convention they're doing this year in San Diego, and different things didn't happen. But just sort of want to kind of hit some of the highlights here. So DC got 20% of their staff cut. That's pretty significant. There's talk about reducing the line by about the same percentage, like 20-25% of the line is probably going to be going away soon. Again, this is going to be the bottom selling stuff. They're not canceling Batman. They're not canceling Superman. The big titles are going to be there still. It's going to be the sort of, lower end of sales, presumably. But again, I've already seen some of the solicits for next month, and some of the books I'm reading are going away, it looks like. And I'm sure there'll be more of that in the coming months. We'll see how this all shakes out.
did they cancel the 5G thing? Because I thought I seen something where they was canceling that.
Yeah, no, 5G sounds like it's kind of done with Dan DiDio, and it looks like the upcoming Detective Comics 1027 will have a story in that is apparently it's a leftover Batman story from all that they're throwing in there. I think that's probably as far as it's going. Now, the other part of that is it sounds like they've announced that the John Ridley Batman miniseries is coming out. And so it sounds like this was what was supposed to happen when Batman, where John Ridley was going to take over writing Batman and bring in Luke Fox as Batman. So I'm assuming that's what that miniseries is going to be. So apparently they probably repurposed that.
And was that all part of the announcement that they're bringing back the Milestone imprint as well?
Yeah, but again, that's something they keep announcing every couple years. Mm-hmm. It seems like this is just something. And again, they're going to go into that at Fandom too, apparently. It's just they were going to try it a couple years ago, but there was a lawsuit that prevented them. And apparently all that wrapped up right before COVID hit. So it's just sort of timing with that. But that sounds like that's something that was going to happen anyway. And again,
yeah, it feels like that they would have, that this would have been the time to say, well, we're not going to do that now, instead of saying we are still going to do that. So,
and again, it sounds like they've been working pretty hard to get Milestone kind of back in the fold there. So I don't think they're going to let that slide at this point. And again, they're talking about, there's all this talk about this 2-year master plan with DC. Don't really know what that means. They're reshuffling the people at the top. We'll see how this shakes out. Again, there's also been some bad news for DC Universe, where it looks like all that original, video content is going to the HBO Max app.
Or the CW.
Specifically, they were saying HBO Max, I saw. But it sounds like, too, the other side of that is that the comic content might be staying or turning into something else. So I would imagine eventually we're going to get the DC Universe app is probably more like Marvel Unlimited, where it's probably just books. So I'm sure they still see the value in having, that digital library. And you got to think there was a lot of work and time put into that. If you're a comic book company, why do you just toss that, when that's potential revenue right there? It's just passive income basically for them.
Right.
Well, not only that, but with everything that's been going on, it seems like them and other companies are kind of wanting to go that digital route anyway. And with everybody got stuck home before, they only had digital to read for a lot of this stuff.
Right.
So digital seems like with anything is going to be the new thing.
Yeah, but like, where do you go with digital? Because you've got to change the model as is. Because right now I'm paying like $60 a year for DC Universe. I dropped that a week in comics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, why would I buy a digital comic if I'm just going to get it on DC Universe in a few months? You know what I mean? So
True.
That's
what I'm saying.
If things go digital, the model's going to change, from what we have right now. Again, one of the other really telling things is Jim Lee brings up the fact that, this is all coming down from AT&T, and it's the whole thing of they bought Warner Brothers and DC thinking they were getting another Marvel. And that's not necessarily the case. DC, everyone knows what DC is worth, and they're not getting the billion-dollar movies that Marvel does. And so Jim Lee is, kind of bringing up the, DC's value as IP production. And again, that's not the best news you want to hear out of a comic book company, but that's kind of the reality of, business now. And, that's what happens when you sell out your company like that. You don't really have a say in that stuff anymore. So we'll see, again, a lot of longtime creators are saying, in the next year or so, the landscape's going to be pretty different. We're all going to hope for the best, of course. But we'll see how everything shakes out.
Does Jim Lee say anything about dispelling any of the rumors about, just the overall demise of the direct market ultimately? I mean, that is one of the
not a lot of talk about the direct market. He is saying that, they are going to publish comic books. There's not a lot of dispelling going on across the board in this interview, though. It seems like he's really kind of...
Well, that would be the first. I mean, logically, DC, if they pulled themselves out of the direct market and concentrated on, young adults and just went straight through, just wouldn't go, just to pull themselves out of direct market, that would be the first big domino. And I think everyone knows that 99.9% of the remaining stores couldn't survive without the 30% of their product is DC. So
yeah, especially, at the store, Campus Comics, we have a lot of DC customers there. That would be a big hit for us if that all went away. Now, there are rumors that DC is looking, of course, to expand mass market, Walmart, Target, these big stores. Bookstores with the YA stuff, the graphic novels, sort of the scholastic market. and that they aren't going to be focusing on the direct market as much. But I can't see them just walking away from it completely.
And at the same time, I don't see it. I mean, obviously every comic fan we are a very loyal group of people, and we love our comic book stores, and we're very loyal to the comic book stores. I don't see, even if there was something that, just devastating like that happen, these characters and these stories aren't going away. There's going to be another avenue for them to be told. So I'm not quite as negative about it as some people are, but it's going to be an interesting couple of years.
Yeah. And again, the thing is, too, the direct market has kept this industry afloat since the 80s. You're not buying comics on the newsstand at the grocery store anymore. That's not what's kept them in business all these years. It's the direct.
Wait a second. None of you ever were.
I was.
Okay, Scott, maybe okay.
My first comic book I ever bought was off a spinner rack at Big John's in El Dorado, Illinois. So thank you very much.
Well, okay. I was counting you as being a little more youthful than that. Okay, that's a good thing. Tyler, I know for sure Tyler and Dan haven't.
No, I have.
You have?
Yeah, at Kroger growing up. I'd get them at the grocery store.
All right. Well, I was buying them there before there was any direct market stores. So,
well, the direct market didn't start till the early 80s, right?
Right.
Yeah, I've been buying comics since '77, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, to me, if they did away with the direct market for comic books and stuff, and if they keep putting it out on Walmart, Target, things like that. Now, if they come out with content where it's just like what we're getting now at the Campus Comics location, then that would be somewhat fine, I guess. If that's all we had, I don't want that. But if they're going to keep up this thing of, oh, well, here's like 5 pages of a short Batman story that you're going to get every month, and then the rest of it's just filler reprints, it's like, to me, some of those stories are good, but at the same time, some of them seem like something you would get off the back of a cereal box, like Tricks or something, like, oh, look at this little adventure that Batman's in, and it's for like 2- and 3-year-old kids, and the content's dumbed down. And then it worries me, too, that some of them's going to try to take the business model like Funko Pop does and stuff and be like, oh, well, this book's only going to be available exclusively digital, or this book's going to be exclusively to Target, or this book's going to be exclusive to FYE. And like, I was in Barnes & Noble over the weekend. They had 0 comic books on any of their shelves. The only thing they do now is trades and hardcovers.
Right.
And it's
that's
my thought on it.
That model already kind of exists. There are books that, we just saw for a couple of years. There are books exclusive to Walmart. They've done Target exclusives. That is a thing. It's not as widespread, as I think is what you're suggesting, but like that's
right.
our,
well,
we're already living in that, just to a lesser degree.
But wasn't one of the areas that they had a major reduction in force was basically their DC's reprint area for hardcovers and trades, and then that got to impact all that mass market stuff that has all the reprint material in it?
Well, it sounds like the idea is they're going to license, again, this is rumors. We don't have any inside info here. This is just kind of what we read online, but apparently there's talk about licensing stuff to IDW for that. And that it sounds like individual editors at DC, like they will be responsible for the collections of their books. So like the individual editors are going to oversee that now. So I think it's going to be the same thing where we're going to see a reduction in trades and collections. Not everything's probably going to get a trade like it's been for years now. But, that's definitely going to take a hit. But yeah, we'll have to see how everything kind of pans out at the end of all this.
That's my big thing is I feel like if they go out of direct market, the content's going to be weak. It's not going to be good. I mean, we've got a lot of really cruddy stories here in the last couple of years that just ain't that great. But it seems like it's going to be just more watered down, same story after story kind of thing.
I mean, if they just go mass market, that's definitely what it'll be. It'll be trying to appeal to, the lowest common denominator. You'll get a lot of more all ages stories and things like that, which that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it'll definitely be different. And again,
be a lot more one and dones.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And again, like not everything needs to be a 6-part, 12-part story, so I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that. But especially if they're moving away from collections. I mean,
Well,
the other part about them with the direct market is though too, is Lunar specifically said that the reason DC, wanted to get away from Diamond in the short term anyway was because comic shops reached out to them and were saying, if we don't have books, we're not going to survive this. Because originally, Diamond was predicting, August, right around now, to start shipping books again after the shutdown. And a lot of comic shops were saying, we won't survive that. That's too long without something to sell. And so, initially, that was why DC went to other distributors, was to get books into, stores. What were you saying, Scott?
Well, I was just going to say, and it's not directly related to what you were just talking about, but I think the reduction, I see a reduction in DC's line of 25% of their books as actually a positive.
Oh, absolutely.
DC and Marvel are both, and we've actually said this on the podcast multiple times in the past, DC and Marvel are putting out way, way too many books.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of it too is just to keep indie books off the shelves.
You know what? And I don't think that's making a lick of difference myself. So, but who knows?
And it's again, smaller stores, it probably does. But, it just with social media and, online and everything, you can find something if you want it. But again, you may not get that casual sale, I suppose.
Yeah, it's like the story I always use for, the number of titles. And of course, the price of comics now is like back in, gosh, I can't remember the year now, whatever Marvel launched the new universe. That was 8 titles. And that first month that all 8 titles of those came out, I bought every single one of them actually for probably 3 or 4 months, most of which were garbage, right?
Right.
But because there wasn't that big of an investment. But now, I mean, if there was a new mini line that was inside of Marvel or DC or even Image, you're looking at, a $32 a month investment to pick that up off the shelves.
That was the thing years ago now with the Ultimate Universe. That's why I bought all the Ultimate books. First off, they were quality books. They were really strong there for a long time. But there for quite a while, you only had 4 titles. You had Ultimate Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and then like a mini-series they would do for a while. So that's like 4 books a month. Like, that's it. That's its own corner. There's nothing crossing over into it from the main Marvel line. I bought all those for years.
And if that was the case with Marvel or DC, I would buy a subset like that.
Like, again,
as long as it's good.
I don't want it to go this low. But if you tell me there's only 10 DC books coming out every month, I'm buying them. I'm buying all 10. You know what I mean? I know I don't want there to just be 10 books because that's not much. That's not going to keep doors open. But,
But if more people, though, are coming in and buying those books because there's just 10, it actually could help. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have we beat that enough?
Yeah, anybody else have anything you want to say about that before we move on?
Should we talk about the toy lines and the statue lines? I mean, just as we kind of hit on the reprint stuff, we didn't really talk about the statues.
It sounds like DC Direct is kind of switching up a little bit. Like, they're not going to be producing very much. It sounds like maybe higher end kind of stuff. And like action figures are going to be kind of licensed out. We already have McFarlane and Spin Masters kind of doing stuff in mass market. But it looks like that they're going to be licensing, that kind of stuff out now. So I assume the DC Essentials line is probably done, it sounds like. I don't know where that really leaves the Batman Black and White statue line, if they consider that high end or not. Hopefully those dumb Batman cows are going away. We don't see those anymore. Other than that, I don't, again, they've already solicited stuff. I would imagine that stuff's still coming out. We'll see. Because they were so far ahead on that stuff. I can't see them just, turning off the factory line tomorrow and it's done. That's not going to happen. So we'll see how that shakes out.
All right.
Guys have anything else to bring up with that, or are we ready to move on?
I think I'm ready to move on.
Nope.
Okay. So next up, we're going to keep looking at the Batman: The Adventures Continue comic. Again, this is something that, was coming out during the shutdown and everything digitally, and it's at print now. And so we're going to be looking at chapters 9 and 10, digital version, which would be issue 5, I think, when it comes out physically.
Yes.
And I think as we're recording this, issue 3 is out of the physical comic.
Yes.
So if you want to get those that way, you can.
I forgot who was doing the synopsis of part 9.
I am.
Mike, okay.
All right. Mike, you want to
Take it away.
All right. Well, this is Batman: The Adventures Continue #9, and this issue is written by Alan Burnett and Paul Dini, with the art by Ty Templeton and Monica Kubina. She's the colorist. And on a striking cover, we have featured in the foreground for the first time in this series, the Red Hood, in full costume along with Batman. And in the background, you got the other members of the Batman family, Nightwing, Tim Drake, Robin, and Batgirl swinging in the Gotham skyline. And the name of the story is Red Sun Rising, Part 1. In the opening scene, we find the Joker peering out of his window of his funhouse hideout at Jason Todd, who's been surveilling the Joker from the top of this Ferris wheel in the amusement park. The Joker informs his goon, Straight Man, which that has all kinds of funny double meanings in my mind, who is busy doing these one-handed curls with a barbell. The Joker tells him about their onlooker. Now, Joker doesn't know this is Jason Todd at the time, but Joker makes a little joke saying that it must be pretty cold out there because this guy's packing heat, and that was about the only joke, and it was pretty lame at that. So,
come on, it was perfect. I loved it.
It was just the right amount of corn, I guess. Yeah.
It felt like an animated series joke. So
true. Sometimes I have to remember this isn't your typical comic book. It's just it's the animated style. So Joker and Straight Man decide to flesh out Jason Todd by damaging the framework of the Ferris wheel and knocking it over. Straight Man and Todd battle it out, with Todd commenting on his bullets, or that his bullets can't seem to stop Straight Man. They really never went any further with that. I'm not sure if he's got some level of invulnerability or what it is. But this was the first time that we see actually Jason Todd using his pistol. The Joker tosses a hand grenade in the direction of Todd, giving him and Straight Man time to make their getaway, which it was kind of a weird deal where they thought, well, they engaged with Jason Todd, but then they quickly had to go to some desperate means to get to escape. So in a very brief next scene, we have Commissioner Gordon and Batman inspecting the scene of the melee at the amusement park. Batman was able to suss out from the evidence that the Joker was visited by someone not making a friendly call. Back in the Batcave, Batman's inspecting the evidence collected when trusty Alfred brings him his supper before it gets cold. And Batman tells Alfred that there were no fingerprints on the gun found at the scene, but oddly enough, there were fingerprints on the bullets found, and that they belonged to one Jason Todd. I'm not sure of the significance of that they were on the bullets and not the gun. It just seemed like a strange, offbeat thing, but maybe I'm just missing something.
I think it's supposed to point to Batman's deductive powers, is how I took it. But
I guess so. Wow. Okay. And I also noticed a little commentary here is, Dan, maybe you can tell me, is this Alfred in the animated series? Does he have the completely white hair and not black or salt and pepper?
Yeah, so this is, again, sort of keeping with the New Batman Adventures when they brought the show back on WB. And kind of going back, keeping with that theme, what kind of bothered me is that is not the version of Joker that we see here. The version of Joker that Templeton's drawing here is closer to what came later in the Justice League cartoon. This version of Joker had a very stark look where his eyes were in shadow and he had kind of the two white beady eyes kind of showing through and no red on the lips. It's a really kind of minimalist version of Joker that I know was polarizing to some people, but I really liked it. And this is definitely based on the sort of the later Justice League version. So I'm kind of like, why are we getting that and not, the New Batman Adventures version? Because we're getting that version of everybody else, including Batman.
Because they're setting up the Batman animated Three Jokers.
Let's hope
that's good.
Hey, more action figures.
Did anybody else have any comments on this far into it?
Nope.
Now, Tyler, you said you haven't read it yet?
No, I'm behind.
Okay.
So spoilers for Tyler.
All right. Yeah, I never thought of that. So,
It's all right.
yeah, we're pretty spoilery here. So anyway, as soon as Batman reveals to Alfred that the evidence or the prints are Jason Todd's, Alfred is shocked because we all know that Jason Todd is dead. Of course, Alfred must not know this is comics and no one stays dead. Batman deduces that Todd is also their stalker. And about this time, Tim Drake, Robin, walks into the conversation and he's insistent on knowing more about his predecessor. And I had to laugh. Batman pulled a full cop out and said, "Alfred, you explain it to him," and he peeled out of there. So he just left it up to Alfred to tell the story. And this leads to my favorite part of the story, which is a retelling of the Jason Todd / Robin origin. Now, please, if you guys have an interjection to correct me on any of this, because I'm going mostly by memory about the Jason Todd history. So correct me if I'm wrong anywhere. So anyway, Jay,
I'm going to have a lot to interject here, so you just go ahead.
Okay.
I've got a lot to say about this in here.
Okay. All right. Good.
No.
So anyway, keep in mind that Jason Todd had two origins. One around 1983. I forget what issue of Batman that was in. There was a Batman. The first issue was Batman I Know, and it was just a partial first appearance, and then his full first appearance I think was in a Detective Comics. But regardless, it was 1983.
Which ones were he still in the tires?
That's later on in like 1987.
Oh, okay. So it's even further than the other two origins.
That's post-crisis, yeah. So anyway, the first one was in 1983, and his origin is very much like Dick Grayson's. I mean, he's part of a circus family. His parents are murdered, etc. Not very inventive, to be honest. But Jerry Conway, I mean, I'm surprised he didn't come up with something a little bit better. Anyway, this retelling in this comic, this issue that we're talking about now, is a version of Jason Todd's post-crisis origin, in which he was a street kid. He was an orphan, kind of making it on his own, basically. And Alfred relates that Jason's older brother, this is Alfred telling Tim, Tim, about the origin here. And he's saying how Jason's older brother was part of a street gang that initiated new members by making him the lookout on a robbery. And he's supposed to wear like a red hood, which is really more like a red ski mask. Jason's brother was the most visible and vulnerable player on the robbery, making him a good distraction, in case the cops did come. Anyway, as Jason's brother's trying to get away after the robbery, the fire escape he was perched on collapsed and he died in the fall. So Batman is watching this all from afar, and he tracks down this gang, only to find that Jason, this I guess apparently was days later, but just long enough for Jason to get track down the gang himself, and he's dressed in a red hoodie and a mask, and he's whooping up on this bunch of gang members pretty handily. Now remember, Jason's 12 years old, he's depicted as, and all of these gang members are probably young adults. After one of the gang members drops their pistol, Jason goes for it and with every intention to use it, but Batman intervenes and stops him. And that's pretty much how Batman and Jason Todd met, as Alfred explains it. Jason was an orphan, and as a kindred spirit, Bruce decided to bring him under his wing. Alfred tells Tim that he wasn't at all surprised, knowing that Bruce has always kind of operated better with a partner. However, Alfred believed that Jason's recruitment was a little premature, despite his extraordinary skill set, who he compares to being, or basically says is equal to Master Dix. Any comments or anything before we go into the closure?
No, I'd say go ahead.
You're gonna, okay.
We'll just do everything after.
Okay. So Alfred closes his story by saying Jason was wanting to wear the Robin suit, after being with Batman for a while. But Batman said he wasn't quite ready, and later on that evening, Alfred finds that the Robin suit's missing from the case. That ends the first chapter of this, I will say, very enjoyable story. The only other comments I have is that, just a little bit on Jason Todd, and that is Like I said, his first appearance was in 1983 issues of Batman. I don't have the issue numbers. Dan probably does. And
357 is his first actual appearance of Jason Todd.
Okay.
And then I think, what was it, like 366 is him as Robin.
Okay, gotcha. And anyway, his new origin was in like 1987, and that's post-crisis. And I think that was
like right after year one. I feel like an issue or two.
Yeah, right. So, but I think they used post-crisis as sort of the, story. What do you call it when the plot device basically to allow for that change in origin because it was the new realigned universe in DC.
So, led to that.
Yeah.
Street Kid
Right.
origin.
Right. So, I mean, I'm sure you're going to cover the rest of it because it's basically just a chronological what I remember because I have some of these issues, but not all of them. But anyway, it was a great story, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
Well, I don't know. I feel like we've got a lot to go over here because, we are dealing with the continuity of Batman the Animated Series and the new Batman Adventures. There was never a reference to Jason Todd in that stuff. Tim Drake was the second Robin. To the point where they kind of combined. They basically gave Tim Drake Jason Todd's origin. Sort of streamlining like they used to do on that show. So this kind of feels redundant to me, is because we already have Tim Drake with essentially Jason Todd's origin in this continuity, and now we find out that there's this secret Robin. And again, there was never any hint of that before. We got a lot of retconning going on here. I know there's some people online, like I guess there's videos about this and stuff where people are getting upset about how this kind of messes with the timeline. And I think there's the argument to be made of like, well, there's time in between the two shows, but there is even a miniseries that I brought up on here before called Batman Adventures of the Lost Years, which kind of goes into that, where Dick becomes Nightwing and that kind of thing. And again, there's still no mention of Jason Todd during that time, which is kind of where that would have had to happen in this continuity. Again, maybe I'm just getting to be picky old man with this, but these are sort of I'm sure that's part of this. But again, this is sort of a beloved show, and everybody likes these stories and things. And this is Alan Burnett and Paul Dini writing it, who worked on these shows.
And I see, Dan, let me interject. I see myself in you, except it's not comic books, it's the animated series, and I am not invested in that at all. I bet I haven't seen a half a dozen episodes of any of the DC animated series. Wow. So it does this allowed for me to have to enjoy the story quite a bit more. Whereas if it's a comic book, I give up anymore on DC continuity. Tyler and I have had a lot of conversations about Rebirth and all that. But anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Well, that's the thing. We've never had a real retcon with this continuity. This is a specific thing, they're referencing here. And again, we're kind of getting a mashup of Jason Todd's origin and the Red Hood sort of New 52 origin, where it's a street gang that has the hood. It kind of passes it around. And again, I feel like, yes, Jason Todd's original pre-crisis origin is just a carbon copy of Dick Grayson's. I completely understand wanting to stay away from that. And I feel like, you're just kind of, I wasn't on the episode that we talked about this, but where, you've got the Azrael story is very condensed down. I feel like that's what they're kind of doing here because there's so much ground to cover in getting to the Red Hood. In comic-wise, it's like you have to have Dick Grayson, then he has to leave, then Jason Todd has to come in, then Jason Todd has to die. Jason Todd's dead for years, then he gets resurrected. Now he's the Red Hood. There's a lot of walking to get to that. And, here we're dealing with basically one comic book issue, trying to condense this whole story and work in this retcon of this, secret Robin and all this. But, just like Tim Drake's reaction in the Batcave when he confronts them is he says, who was this Jason? He was the second Robin, wasn't he? So, like, Tim Drake suspects that, there was a Robin in between him and Dick. And so it's like, this never came up. Where are we getting this? I don't even really remember this being threaded throughout this miniseries as we've been going through. I feel like we all kind of knew this was coming just because we know the story of Jason Todd and Red Hood. But I feel like it just really comes out of left field in this continuity.
I took it because of the fact that Batman. It sounds like he was playing coy with who it was. It's like he knew who it was the whole time and just wasn't talking about it.
Right.
Is how I took, whenever he'd see the guy, knew how long it would take for that person to escape off that one rooftop and the amount of time that he had to get there. So he knew exactly who it was. And to me, it was just that this was some secret part of his past that even the Bat family didn't know about.
Right.
And then with Tim Drake being the smart one, he kind of was able to piece things together that other members of the Bat family weren't able to piece together.
Well, I mean, we've got that, but we have the flashback where he's training here, and Barbara and Alfred are watching him. Like,
oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Everybody knew about this guy, and apparently he died, and they never talk about him. Yeah. So. And just on the last page, we do have Jason Todd showing up in the animated Robin costume, which is kind of neat. But we also got Firefly in. Why couldn't we have gotten a cameo from a different character? We've already had Quasi-Firefly in this run. I feel like this is a missed opportunity here where we could have thrown in somebody else. Especially if they're wanting. The whole point of this is to expand their action figure line.
Right.
Why aren't we throwing in as many characters as we can here? Are we going to get a straight man action figure? I doubt it. You know what I mean? So it's like, why didn't we throw in somebody else here that we haven't done a figure of yet? Or maybe that wasn't on the animated series. But again,
Mike and I had a great discussion about all the action figure possibilities, and like the last time that we that we talked about this series.
Well, that's the reality of it.
Now we got straight man to add. I can't wait for that one.
And overall, I'm liking this series, but the reality is that's the whole reason we're getting this. Does anybody else have anything to say about Chapter 9?
Nope.
Okay.
To me, I haven't caught up on any of it, but to me, it just sounds like they're trying to cram a bunch of stuff in all in a short amount of time because they think they're not going to get too much out of this.
Yeah, and the thing. Dude, this easily could have been a 12-issue miniseries. There's no reason you couldn't give this stuff a little more time to breathe.
Right.
They've got so much Batman history, though. They could do this format for years and years,
sure.
Even at the pace that they're going. So
and people like the animated series enough. You could keep this going, and people would buy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
This also this sort of retcon thing also kind of irks me with the whole idea of I kind of wish they had just picked this up after Justice League, where because in theory we know where the stories head, where this continuity kind of heads into the Justice League cartoon and into Unlimited. I'd rather see a Batman after that where they can just go wild and do anything they want, And again, and then there's other versions of all those characters too that redesign, so you could do like another Batman action figure. You could do these other characters again.
Well, they could take and go through the archives of action figures they released for that original show. And I mean, there was tons of concept costumes they gave that version of Batman and Joker and everything else that I ever saw in any of the older books or in the show.
Yeah. Well, there's also still characters on there that they never did action figures of either. Like, I don't think they ever did Red Claw, who was original to the show, or Condiment King, who's gone into other media now, even. So why don't
if we get a straight man figure before Condiment King, we riot.
That's So on to Chapter 10?
Yep.
Okay, so kind of picking up where we left off. We've got Red Sun Rising Part 2 here, and we're sort of still in the flashback of Batman and Robin fighting Firefly. Then we see them kind of coming back to the Batcave and kind of having it out, and Alfred's having to break them up. And Jason's telling him, I'm not Dick Grayson, I can't be, I won't be. But, he just asks the Batman, gives him a chance. And so then we kind of see them kind of fighting crime. An interesting thing I wanted to point out here was going back to the pre-crisis version of Jason Todd. Jason now has a slightly different costume than Dick Grayson, and it does feature red boots, which were sort of the proto costume that Jason Todd had before, like, he was officially Robin or whatever, because he did just end up in Dick Grayson's old costume, essentially. So it was kind of neat seeing a couple tweaks to the costume here. But, we have him fighting other villains that we saw in the animated series of Ventriloquist and Scarface and Lockup. But again, already showing Jason being a little more brutal with those characters than Batman and the rest of them are. And then, we get a scene where they're all where Batman, Robin, and Batgirl are fighting the Scarecrow. And Jason punches him and knocks him out a window. And Batman has to rescue him. Batman chastises him, saying, "You could have killed him." Jason's response is, "One less oddball. Maybe now the other creeps will realize we mean business." So again, a harsher take than you usually get from the Bat family. But Alfred confronts Batman about this, and Batman says, "Oh, he's just reacting to the Scarecrow's toxin." And it feels like Batman is just sort of making excuses for Jason's behavior at this point, still wanting to kind of, see the best in him. But Alfred, is trying to give him a reality check here. And Jason kind of confronts them and has it out with Batman and takes off. Then, kind of back to the present time period now. Batman goes to the old bar that the Red Hood gang used to hang out at and finds Jason Todd there now in the more sort of traditional Red Hood that we know him from the, standard comic books. And they just sort of, have it out here. And Jason Todd points out that Batman should have realized that all the whiskey bottles were filled with gasoline when he came in. Jason Todd shoots them, lights the bar on fire. And then, we've got next issue, Red Hood's Rampage. So that's kind of a short version here of Chapter 10. Does anybody have anything they wanted to bring up?
I actually thought these two issues moved a little slower than some of the previous ones because of so much of the origin story. So I didn't actually enjoy these two as much as most of the previous issues. It's not that I don't enjoy a good origin, but
right,
it just seemed to move a lot slower to me. So.
Yeah, these are the two I'm finding so far that I'm not really enjoying that much. And again, part of it is just sort of the wedging Jason Todd in here. The way they did it kind of irks me. I know that's kind of my hang up. I don't, it's probably not fair to judge the story that way, but that's where I'm at with it.
I'm also surprised that they have, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be surprised by this, that they've basically removed the Joker's part of him becoming the Red Hood, by, basically killing, quote unquote, Jason Todd. So
we've never had a Joker origin in this continuity. So then you have to establish that. So then that, again, if we had 12 issues, you could probably do that. Right. But we've got 6, physical issues is what I'm talking about. We will have 12 digital chapters. But, again, give this time to breathe. Give it more issues. We can do some of that stuff,
Okay, so I guess I didn't realize that this was going to be limited to 6 physical issues. I thought this was just until they were done with it.
No, I'm pretty sure it's 6.
Okay, all right.
When it listed in the previews months back when we, I think, did our last actual meetup podcast, we had went over it and it had said it was a 6-issue mini series or something on the sort.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was hoping for an ongoing, because I really like the Batman Beyond Unlimited they did a few years ago, and it got cut short to like 11 issues.
Yeah, this really should be an ongoing series.
Yeah. So. Oh, yeah, people would buy this. I'd get this. It's been pretty good other than this. But
this was still good. It just didn't quite hit the level of the previous issues.
No.
So
we got those speed bumps and stuff like this.
Yeah. So we got to talk about the figures that they can add. Of course, you've already talked about Straight Man, right?
Right.
But I guess so. This is a different version of Joker than what they've had a figure of for. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't think they did this version of Joker in that line.
Okay. And then, of course, you can get the gang members, the wolves, right. One with the Red Hood and one without the Red Hood.
Again, he's just a cameo here, but I don't think they ever did Lockup either. And he's a character that comes from the animated series. I would really like to have a figure of him.
What about the Skeleton Crew?
Yeah, I don't think they've done them. I'm pretty sure they did Scarecrow.
Right, I figured I kind of guessed that they'd do Scarecrow.
Yeah. Again, we've got 2 Jason Todd figures you can do as Robin. You got him
Right.
and Dick Grayson, and then the sort of modified his version of the costume. And then
You got to get the Joker's bumper car as a vehicle, and then the Ferris wheel
there you
playset.
go. You do the bumper car with Straight Man.
Yeah, there you go.
You do that. But yeah, they made the Bat Computer, they made Alfred, they've made a lot of stuff here. They did the Bat Cycle. So yeah, but yeah, there's definitely some more they can throw in there, and of course we're getting Red Hood.
Mm-hmm.
So
We're gonna grade it.
I'm gonna go very good on this. I was not as into this as I was the previous chapters. So yeah, again, it's not bad, but yeah, again, just they needed more time than I think they got. And again, I mean, you can make the argument that that's also sort of in step with the show, where they only had X amount of time, and they did a couple 2-parters on that show, but they never really kind of chewed the fat on anything. They really kind of streamlined things for the animated series.
I'm gonna go fine, very fine, which is your 7.0 grade, just because I felt like it was a little bit slower than some of the previous issues, but I still enjoyed it. So, what about you, Mike?
Well, I didn't read issue 10 because I didn't have access to it. So I can grade based on issue 9, and like I said earlier, I thought it was really enjoyable. Maybe it was just the look back at Jason Todd's origin, his history, regardless of its place in this universe or consistency with the universe. I thought it was good. I would probably give it probably a 7.5. So I'd give it probably a very fine, actually. So
Okay. Tyler? Oh, that's right. Never mind. Sorry. I'll keep pouring salt in that wound.
We'll say NA.
Well, are we ready to move on to Watchmen?
Think so.
Yep.
All right. Well, we covered the first 5 episodes last time when we talked about the Watchmen. I know Dan and Tyler, you weren't on the episode whenever we talked about those 5. So, is there something out of the first 5 episodes that you would really like to talk about or have a comment on or whatever?
I really liked the Looking Glass episode.
Yeah.
Now there's that. I don't know
That's episode 5.
what I'm going to say that you guys probably didn't already bring up.
Okay. All right. Well, here's okay. Go ahead, Tyler.
I mean, for me, pretty much what you guys went over, there's not much else I have to say. I mean, the Looking Glass episode was phenomenal. Getting to see the actual squid and stuff. Like, I already knew what was going to happen, but just getting to see it on TV, I was like, here it comes.
Yeah.
And then it was there right in Times Square. And I think probably one of the big things that I would have to mention about this show that hasn't been mentioned yet is the music that was made for this show is very good. It sets the mood for what's going on, which the music's made by Trent Reznor, who's the guy that's the lead man of Nine Inch Nails. Just there's so many, like the one song that's Angela Abar's theme song, which is None with a Bleep Gun, is like so good. It's just like the whole soundtrack. Like I've actually, when I got done watching the show, I got on YouTube and listened to like all like 50, 60 tracks or whatever of the soundtrack. And I was just at work, like listening to all those. And it's cool because the soundtrack, they put little clippets of the show in it. So it's like listening to the show happening as you're going through it. So the music's phenomenal.
Yes.
It really sets that dark, eerie mood for some of the scenes and stuff. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I had a comment at the end just to mention that the music was just excellent throughout the entire series. Now I focus more on the non-original stuff that they brought in. It's amazing that I could in hindsight look at a George Michael song and think that was the perfect fit for that particular scene.
Well, and that's something I wanted to bring up too, is Watchmen has a good way of not only having good original music, but like with the movie and the original book that happened prior to it, in the book, in the end of each issue, it had little excerpts from certain songs. Like, probably one of the popular ones is Bob Dylan, All Along the Watchtower. But in the movie, they did the Jimi Hendrix version, and the lyrics match up perfectly with that scene. After Manhattan and Lori's up on the moon, and she finds out that comedians are dead, and it pans out with the smile on the moon, and All Along the Watchtower starts playing. As soon as the lyrics kick in and you hear two riders were approaching and stuff, like if you listen, it syncs up to Rorschach and Night Owl coming on to Antarctica or wherever that was, and they come into Ozymandias' palace. It's just, Mike and I, Mike, no, we've nerded out on the music part alone. That whole thing is just, it's fantastic that they picked the songs they picked, and then they had Trent Reznor orchestrate the actual music score for it. It's just, that in and of itself for a music guy is a nerd out thing.
Yeah, they knocked that out of the park for sure. So, okay, so I asked Mike his opinion on this. I'm gonna go ahead and ask your guys' opinion on this. So, my favorite episode of the series was episode 3, which is where we get the Silk Spectre, the Laurie Blake introduction into the series. And we've kind of talked about this not recording, so maybe you've had a little bit more time to think about this. But the thing that threw me was at the end of the episode. So she's coming out of the phone Manhattan booth, right? And basically Angela's car nearly gets dropped on top of her. Okay, so then she looks up into the sky, and as far as I can tell, she's looking at the planet Mars, which is allegedly where Dr. Manhattan is supposed to be. And it is like the planet zooms in on her, which to me was, I thought at the time, watching it the first time, I thought it was clear evidence that, that Dr. Manhattan was actually on Mars. So how do you guys have a different interpretation of that scene than what I did?
I mean,
watch that again, being that specific with it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, my whole thing. Yeah, when I watched it, I didn't get a chance to go back and rewatch that part to see if that's what had happened. I need to do that. But to me, what it looked like is almost like a camera, like focusing in on Mars, and it kind of has that zoom effect to it in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But my whole thing I just took from that scene was it's that typical Watchmen kind of set up to where, I don't know, it had that vibe to it where, she's telling him the joke, and then she comes out, and then the cars drop down in front or behind her, and she looks up at Mars, and she thinks that Manhattan responded and he got the joke, and that was his retaliation, which obviously isn't. It just was a coincidence. No. Which, spoilers, if anything gets said prior to us talking about future episodes.
But, a lot of spoilers for next it's wrapped up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's just what I took it as, is like, oh, haha, she told the joke, and then he ended up doing it to her.
He had the punchline.
Okay,
exactly.
So I just rewatched that. I'm going with Tyler on that.
Really? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So you don't think it was the planet zooming in on her? You think it was just a camera shot zooming in on Mars?
Yeah.
Okay.
You see, Mars kind of lights up a little bit there, so I think that, it is Manhattan responding. And because everyone is looking for Manhattan on Mars, and he's even said that they keep making the point if there's it's a decoy up there.
Mm-hmm. Right. But see, that's the thing, is he wasn't actually there, so he couldn't have been responding from Mars. So
I think he absolutely could have been.
Okay. All right.
We've seen him. He experiences everything at once. He can split himself up into multiple entities or whatever, however you want to say it. I think, just because it's a decoy up there, I'm sure he's still aware of what that decoy is doing.
Well, no. I felt like they made it pretty clear that the only time that they're in this show that he could actually act as Manhattan was purely by instinct. So that was how, Angela got saved on the White Knight. So.
Because that would have, because that's still when he's, it doesn't realize he's Manhattan. Okay.
So anyway, but the thing is, though, too, is he experiences time differently than other people. So even, that's like, and we'll talk about this in the future in the episodes coming up we're going to discuss. but like he experiences like several different moments at one time. So he could be in the present talking to you right now, but at the same time he's in the past talking to like your grandpa or something, or he's in the future talking to somebody else, and he's telling you what's going on in all those different scenarios. So I mean, the possibility of that happening, that he responded, I could see it being a possibility, but I don't think it was. I think it was just a coincidence. And she just kind of breaks out in maniacal laughter, thinking, "Oh my God, he recognized me, and
Well,
he knows my joke, and he got it and stuff."
yeah, I actually just think it's a mistake in the storytelling. So
Could be that too.
yeah,
HBO's done that.
Or it's just, well, I kind of took it as it could have been like misdirection too, so they didn't give it away so soon. Like, oh, well, Manhattan's not on Mars. Like it gets you.
Yeah, I thought
thinking.
the same thing, Tyler. I thought maybe it was a little bit of a red herring.
Yeah, because we do see later that what's her name? You know, they monitor all these calls. You know, it is possible somebody was listening in there where she was in the phone booth.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. Well, we probably spent too much time on that, so.
Yeah.
So episode 6, this extraordinary being. So the little blurb for this one is deep under the influence of nostalgia. Angela gets a first-hand account of her grandfather's journey. So in episode 6, this is where we really kind of get the true origin of Hooded Justice, basically through a series of flashbacks that Angela Abar is experiencing, where she basically takes on, becoming her grandfather. And then we learn that the version of Hooded Justice is nothing like what Night Owl, the first Night Owl, had deduced who Hooded Justice was. I thought it was a really good episode. I don't really have a whole lot of comments on this one. It was nice to kind of get that origin story for Hooded Justice, and a character that's really not, is obviously there in the Watchmen series, but not a whole lot is said about the character.
Yeah, I feel like this is the one character they could really do that with too, just because you have so little of him, and you don't, he's not really fleshed out in the original series.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably my favorite episode of the show, though, too. I really like
it. Up there.
There's a lot of fun techniques they're doing of Angel experiencing, his life in black and white, but then kind of running into his memories where you've got stuff going on in the background that happened when he was a child. You have these kind of violent scenes making their way through the action of, what's going on in, the present of the memories. And I could probably just watch Hooded Justice beating up Klansmen like all day long.
Yeah.
I'd watch a show just of that. If they just did a Hooded Justice show set back in the 40s or 50s, like I'd watch that all day. But yeah.
Tyler, Mike, you got anything else on 6?
Yeah, I thought the origin they decided on with Hooded Justice for this was fantastic, because like Dan said, nothing ever really was established with this character. Now, I haven't gotten around to reading all of the Before Watchmen stuff, so I don't know if they ever did anything with that character.
I haven't read any of the Before Watchmen stuff.
I've read very little, and I don't think anybody really cares.
Yeah, that was my take on
it.
Liberties where they're going with that.
Well, and if that's the case, it seemed like the concept of this character's origin, not having one, they just gave them the open to be like, we can branch off of this whole thing alone.
Yeah.
So the origin they chose for this was great, and the little Easter egg where Angela Abar's experiencing his past, and she's at the newspaper stand and she picks up an Action Comics #1 and she's reading it. Like, the similarities, there's a lot of parallels between her grandpa's Hooded Justice and Superman, because, it shows him being carried out in a vessel of some kind out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and his world's destroyed. His family's gone, his whole people, all of them's gone, and then he grows up to go to New York to be a cop, and he's not wanted. He's a hero, but nobody wants him because he's different than the rest of them. And so it's been done several times before with the Superman parallels, but I thought it was a really good pick for this. And the whole him fighting the Klan and all this stuff, it really when you break it down, white supremacists and the KKK is a branch off of what Hitler did, and we wouldn't have any of the supervillains we have today all branch off of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. Like, to me,
well, the
they
Klan
were the
Klan predates Hitler and World War II and all that. They go back way further than that. But yeah, as far as superhero mythology and things, yeah, they definitely are right in lockstep with that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and
I think what I got out of what Tyler was saying is that the supremacy aspect of the Klan is something that Hitler ascribed to, and that was his whole thing with the Aryan race and all that stuff. So now I'll say that this was one of my favorite episodes, mostly because it felt like you were immersed in history. It felt like you were watching an episode or that movie L.A. Confidential. He's a cop, and there's dirty cops and there's racist cops, and he's like fed up with trying to live by the rules, and he just takes justice into his own hands. And it was brutal, which is I really like Tyler's. That was a great observation about the comparison with Superman. But I also looked at it just that he was also he was your street level, and he didn't have any powers. He was toughened up by a really rough upbringing, and it was really relatable. And I'm sure a lot of people could see it that way.
Yeah, the other thing I liked about that was when they finally do meet, they kind of introduce the new Minuteman, and the reporter asks him, is his strength supernatural, that kind of thing. Like, there are rumors already that Hooded Justice probably, is more than human, even though he's not. He definitely has that sort of persona. It also kind of reminded me of the Steel subplot in New Frontier, where we had, the New Frontier version of John Henry. Again, similar time period, sort of similar story. And again, it's just something that, we didn't get that in comics back then. It's sort of been overlooked. I think there's a lot of potential there for, a superhero story kind of dealing with, racism and those kind of, themes from back then.
Well, I think in the New Frontier, didn't his character Steel in that also have the hood with the lynch around
with the hangman's noose? Yeah, that's exactly. And I'm trying to think which came first. I mean, you figure the Hooded Justice was in Watchmen, the first. The series came out in what, 86, 87?
86.
Yeah.
It was like.
Yeah, and Steel's like 93, so.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Anyway, that was interesting.
Yeah.
Delay bar.
Yeah, like
code to do her secret room.
Yeah, like Atchison. Before I watched this show, I had heard Matt had mentioned the Tulsa incident and stuff, and before watching it, I never knew this incident ever happened, and apparently it's just something. It's a dark moment in American history that it seems like it got thrown under the rug and got bypassed in some way, because I never knew about it. And obviously in American history class in high school, they don't teach you everything. They teach you the bare basics. So watching this show, even though it's a fictional based show, it felt like you're watching a History Channel special during this episode about this guy, and it feels very real. Like it could have been something that actually happened. And that's one of the things I liked about it too.
Yeah, the Tulsa Massacre, Bass Reeves, those are all based in history. So
yeah, for sure, it's all true.
And again, we are talking about how real this is, but I really did like the sort of supervillain plot of reusing movie theaters to brainwash African Americans and turn on each other. But then we also get the explanation at the end of the show of how Don Johnson's character was killed, where we see Reeves is using a flashlight that he's modified to work like the sort of strobing they use to hypnotize people, and so that's what he did, was he used that on his character to have him kill himself, because as a 100-year-old man in a wheelchair, we were all like, oh, he couldn't have done it, physically. How would he have done that? So, we got the explanation here at the end.
So the Pedia for episode 6, there's 3 articles there. One's a memo where we learn basically that Angela, Angela was under the effects of nostalgia, that actually Lori and others were actually hearing everything that she was saying. They learned, about Hooded Justice and learned that entire background at the same time that we're learning that. The second piece they have is the will of Nelson Gardner, which is where he left everything to Angela's grandfather. That was kind of talked about a little bit inside the series. And then the third piece is just a clipping where they had this article about Lady True, rumors about her and whether they were fact or fiction, at least from the perspective of the show. So the background there is pretty good. We didn't even talk about, Cyclops. That was the memo about, what Lori heard. It's like, what has one eye and loves evil plans. So anything else on episode 6 you guys want to cover?
Let me tell you, that whole deal with the Cyclops thing, like, people have been going on about that for the last probably year and a half, about the circle with the 3 fingers extended, about how this is a white supremacist thing. It's like they've blown it to that point to where it's like, we used to play this as a game in high school. If you looked at the circle, you got slugged. And now they're like, it's white supremacy. It means white power. And I'm like, where did this come from?
Hey, let me tell you, I can tell you for a fact that was a white supremacist hand sign in prisons. It was it was specific to the white gang called the Northsiders. It was.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Yeah, but we're doing going down.
Yeah, the circle game is down. You gotta get somebody to look down.
Good circle game.
Yeah, circle game is looking down, not looking at your forehead.
Around.
Yeah.
You were doing a circle thing.
Me and Josh for the longest time had those on our cars, and I'm like, well, it's a good thing I took mine off. Something.
All right, so episode 7. Episode 7, An Almost Religious Awe. Under Lady True's care, Angela undergoes an unconventional treatment while Agent Blake chases down a lead. Elsewhere, the smartest man in the world delivers a stunning defense of his past actions. So basically, this episode is Angela getting treated for the nostalgia that she's taking, because you're not supposed to take an entire bottle at once. That was part of the problem. Lady True even mentions that during a speech later on that was her company's one big failure, was the nostalgia drug. After in this, we get this crazy scene where Lori Blake goes to talk to Judd Crawford's wife, right? And she's sitting in the chair, and we have the evil mastermind with the chair that drops down into the floor.
Yeah, I really like the design of that, because you're using a remote control to do it, and it's real kind of retro style, like 70s, early 80s remote, and it's just like, it's obviously something they had installed years ago, that kind of thing, and it's like sticking a little bit now where it doesn't drop her down right away, and that I just really like that, kind of tone of that scene. But again, we get a lot of like Angela's sort of origin story here.
A lot of her childhood. Okay, so the actress who played young Angela Abar, she was also in Shazam.
Oh, is that?
Yeah. So at this point, and Mike and I talked about this last time, I've got four actors that have been that played 2 characters in the Marvel and DC universe. Okay, so you got Chris Evans, who was Human Torch and Captain America. You got Josh Brolin, who was Cable and Thanos. All right, you've got I forgot this young actress's name, but she was again one of the Marvel family, and young Angela Abar, and then Cal was Black Manta.
Yeah, and Jeremy Irons was also Alfred.
Oh, that's okay. So Jeremy Irons. Okay, there's another one.
He is here, so he's another one.
Okay.
And Tim Blake Nelson, that plays Looking Glass here, was also the leader for a minute in the Incredible Hulk back years ago, the sort of forgotten MCU movie.
Oh, that's okay. I just actually watched that again not too long ago.
They sort of leave it as a cliffhanger with his character, but yeah, he was definitely supposed to come back as the leader, and that never materialized.
Ah, okay. I didn't realize that was the same actor. So
yeah, and I don't know the actor's name, but Red Scare on here. He's been on some other HBO shows. He had a pretty good part in Boardwalk Empire.
Well, but I'm saying that we're twice in the same universe.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, pointing him out. You know,
Well,
liked him in some smaller parts he's had in different shows.
Jeremy Irons makes 5 then that have had 2 parts in the same universe. Yeah. Okay.
well,
Sorry, Tom.
there's a few other small ones too, where the actress that played first Silk Spectre in the Watchmen movie, and the actor that played not only Ocean Master, but he played Night Owl too in Watchmen. He also, them two both were in Man of Steel. They voiced some of the technology on the Kryptonian ship that Superman was on.
Okay, and then also the Night Owl from the Watchmen movie was also that's right, so Ocean Master. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's 6 then.
So yeah, so I'm not going to feel too bad when we reuse actors in our fantasy castings and
There you
things.
go.
That's happening in real life. There's only so many actors you got to pull from for all these superhero movies they're making now.
Yep.
As long as they just get good actors for the roles. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, and one more too. The guy that played Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen played Barry Allen's dad in Justice League.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
You guys are such nerds.
Hey,
Yeah.
we prefer the term geek. Okay, so get it right. All right.
Well, you said something about great actors, and the first thing I thought of was Jason Momoa, Scott.
Yeah, that's the last. That's the one that I was referring to as a bad actor.
He was also Conan.
Yeah, and my big scare is I'm super psyched for the Dune movie, but he's in it, and that just has me horrified.
I'll make $1 billion.
Yeah.
Momoa.
So the Peteypedia stuff for episode 7, you've got the origin story of Sister Night, and then the Calvin Jelani.
Do they go into the fictional movie of Sister Night?
Let me pull it up here real quick. I'm assuming because they do talk about filmmaking, and yeah, Mr. Ebert's 3-star review of Sister Night. So they do go into that some. Now it's weird that he's Cal Abar, and she's Angela Abar. I guess does that imply that he took her name? I hadn't even thought about that because the medical report is Calvin Jelani for him.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you're right. Huh.
So okay, all right. That's just another little side note there. So all right. So anything else for episode 7?
Yeah, I got a few small things.
All right.
With episode 7, well, I don't want to spoil the next episode. We're going to be talking about it, but when do we find out what the nostalgia is getting drained out into from Angela to what she thinks is her grandpa? Is that this episode or is that the next one?
I think it's this one.
Yeah, I have the same question.
Well, the elephant then.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The elephant in the room?
So
yeah.
So is that what that's supposed to be? Because there's no other mention, just like the lube man from a few episodes prior to you guys.
No, we've got the answer to that.
Oh, what was that?
Oh, dude.
We talked about that last episode, so
That's
I'll
Agent
come back
P.
to it later. I'll save it.
Okay. Well, the elephant, apparently I seen to where they were talking, there's an Easter egg at the beginning of this episode where you see the rack of movies, and she picks up Sister Night off the shelf. There's one that references Silk Spectre that's supposed to be like a story based off of her. And then there's one called Trunky the Elephant, which foreshadows.
There's a couple
Is there
of
a couple?
in there, yeah.
Huh.
Because I noticed that today. I was rewatching this.
I'll have to check that out. I had not noticed that. So.
But I think it's also an issue of the nostalgia, and an elephant never forgets. So,
That's what I think. I think it was a visual reference to an elephant's memory.
yeah.
Okay. Well, now True says that you have to get the replacement. I can't remember what she described from a close relative. So I actually thought that the elephant was just there to put Angela off the scent, and that she actually did get her whatever it was that she needed from her grandfather. That's how I took that scene.
I don't know that I necessarily believe anything that True says though either.
Well, there you go. There's also some.
There's also that.
That's an ironic.
There's irony in the fact that her name's True.
True.
And
That's just what I was thinking.
But it's not spelled True.
Right.
No, but just saying, it's funny hearing.
One other thing I have that kind of seems like something worth noting. Another Easter egg is that Angela always wears blue in this episode. And of course, Manhattan's presence makes a big, it's in the forefront for the beginning of the episode. But she wears blue a lot in her clothing throughout this episode. And then, like, the fish that's on Lady True's desk or whatever, it's blue. And then, so people think that, like, by all the color blue throughout the episode, it leads up to at the end that we get where we find out that Manhattan is Cal.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there's also conspiracy thinking that, because in this episode we also get the origin of John and his family coming from Germany and stuff and escaping. And Angela Abar's grandpa, which was Hooded Justice, his dad served in World War II during Germany. So people wonder if maybe they hadn't met or there's some kind of connection there that later, but that could be just nothing. But
I think that there's a lot of fan theories that some websites like to give a lot of credit to as if they're really, really, something big and they're just nonsense.
Yeah, it's just something I kind of was curious to see what you guys thought. I mean, I kind of thought it was nothing, but in the world of Watchmen, you never know.
Yeah. And not to say they won't run with that down the road later on. So.
And again, we can always just ask Alan more what he thinks too.
Yeah, because he's always very forthcoming about.
He's all about this.
The original author.
Yeah. His name isn't even on this.
No.
No.
Oh, okay, so going back to the PD. All right, so the I don't know if we don't have a name for the canola oil guy. He looks like what is it, like Slick or something from like his Amazing Spider-Man villain or something like that. But anyway, all right. So my theory, and we talked about this last time, is that that new vigilante doesn't show up until after Lori and Petey show up in Tulsa. All right, and he has exactly Petey's build. Okay, so my theory is that was Petey trying to be a superhero. Okay, now. As I was waiting for you guys to get on, for the Skype call, I was going over some of the information in the Peteypedia for episode 9. And there's this memo about Petey, and I don't remember reading this last time, but basically it says that Petey is no longer part of the anti-vigilante task force and that he's had his badge removed and he wouldn't come back to base. But when they were going through his desk, all right, it says, straight up junk cluttering his workspace, multiple copies of Rorschach's journal, hundreds of comic books, why our society is still obsessed with pirates is beyond me, and a jug of what appears to be some kind of canola oil. Help yourselves. So it is pretty confirmed now that Petey was that vigilante.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
I think that was visually the most fun scene of the entire movie.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but
it was crazy. I mean, just crazy to see, and head scratching. I mean, in that way.
All right. So, anything else was that 7? Yeah. Anything else from 7 we want to talk about?
No, I feel like we've kind of covered some ground in 8 already.
8 as well. So yeah. So 8. Also, another very good episode of God Walks into a Bar. Angela's mysterious past in Vietnam is at last revealed. All right, so this is where we get the conversation between Angela and Dr. Manhattan. All right, and it's another of those episodes where it's just so well done. But it's like he comes in and says, "Hey, I'm in love with you," and you're going on. She's away, and then just the episode, that transition, no way to yes, at the end of the fun episode. A lot of basically about what Angela did in Vietnam. after she, her grandmother died and left. She got left the second time. What happened to her. So what are your guys' thoughts on episode 8?
I liked it. It's, kind of going over their relationship. I think it kind of really brings home how Manhattan experiences everything. Again, I think that can be sort of a weird concept for people that aren't familiar with Watchmen necessarily. I feel like this episode does a really good job of explaining that, to someone who's maybe new to this, which I'm sure there's probably a lot of people who are watching, this show that haven't read the comic and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's one thing this series did is it gave the viewer a lot of credit in being able to understand some things like the squid thing, what's going on with these characters that and I didn't feel like they went out of their way to explain a lot of stuff. So it's like you really I could see somebody being totally lost, or feeling totally lost watching this when the first time that they're all in their cars and people pull over to the side as the squids fall from the sky, and it's just they get out and they scrape off their windshields and they go about their day as if it's just a regular thing. And especially as confusing as that would have been for somebody who had only seen the movie and not read the comics.
Right.
Well, like I was sitting down over one of the weekends watching this, and Melissa kind of sat in with me on a couple episodes, and I was getting so excited about stuff, like standing up, like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe this happened. And she's just looking at me like I've lost my mind, and I'm just like, it's like people if they haven't read the book or even seen the movie, because the movie's close enough to the book,
except for the very end,
get what's going on, except the squids, but it's like, yeah, I could see where people would get lost.
So.
I think even in the next episode too, kind of going back to the squids, is like Ozymandias even says like, hey, they're meant to dissolve. They're not supposed to hurt people. They're just meant to be like a reminder, to let everybody know like, hey, this could happen again, sort of thing. Kind of keep everybody in line.
Yeah. Have a bigger threat out there than Russia is basically what it kind of boils down to. So yeah. And I don't, I don't think that this series would have worked as well. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that because obviously the writer did an excellent job on this series. But if they would have gone back to the whole nuclear war thing, like they did in the movie, I think it would have lost some of its impact. Or some of the stuff that was used, I just don't think it would have turned out as well as it did.
Yeah, because when you blame that all on Manhattan and then Manhattan disappears, what's the threat? After that.
Right. Yeah.
Sort of baby.
One thing I'd like to add though too is just a kind of little thing, but like I was curious to see how Jeremy Irons was going to be in this show as Ozymandias, and he ended up being phenomenal. But the main thing I was wondering, I was like, I wonder if they're going to give him the actual comic accurate suit, because in the movie he had the body armor, like almost like Val Kilmer bat nipple suit in a way. And they ended up going full original costume, and it looked great.
Yep. And I like too the whole, she had the statue of him in her garden, and it was him the whole time.
I think this is in episode 9, but we kind of see that, how he came back and that, and True makes a comment to him of like, we have this for you to wear, and he's like, what's wrong with what I'm wearing? Like in his head, this is still a cool, kind of out. His superhero outfit is still, what he wears.
So for the Peteypedia for episode 8, just has a couple of things about fog dancing, which was a book that was found both in Looking Glass's bomb shelter, and also apparently was found among Rorschach's belongings as well. So they kind of go into just some details about that fog dancing book, and that it's very common for vigilantes to associate with that book. So, which I'm not even for sure if that's actually a real book or not. So that I don't know. So anything else?
Atchison have something? I was going to say, did Atchison have something he wanted to say? I thought I interrupted him there. I was going to.
No. You guys covered everything I was going to cover.
All right, so we ready to go on to episode 9?
Real quick, Fog Dancing's not a real book. It just
Okay.
it's just in Watchmen, but it is by the author that wrote the Black Freighter comics.
Ah, okay.
So there's that.
Oh, very cool.
All right, so episode 9, See How They Fly. Everything ends in the series finale for real this time. So we finally find out, about going back to the first episode, why they were getting all those watch batteries. All right, so this is part of the backstory for the Watchmen universe, is that, and this is why like they don't have the internet in this Watchmen universe, right? Because a lot of technology, some things are further ahead, but a lot of other things are behind, where we are in the real, 2020 or 2019, whenever this came out. But they wanted these lithium batteries because those had basically been removed because there was concern that some of the Dr. Manhattan technology actually caused cancer. So there was a long period of time where they just wouldn't use that stuff. So they, built this cage, having to track down all of those, old lithium style batteries to actually hold Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah,
and
made into the cage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then of course it was funny to see the black shorts, that Manhattan wore during Vietnam on Senator Keene.
Yeah, 'cause, like you think he's just gonna strip down naked in that scene, and then when he gets done, he's wearing those shorts.
Yeah. Huh?
He has a pretty good line about that though too. I like that
Yes,
when he
he
says,
did. Yeah.
"Won't compete here," but
Well, especially
It's
with
kinda-
Blake being there.
It's kind of ironic too, in a little bit of a way, that the thing that John being the watchmaker's son and his dad being a master at watchmaking, that the watch battery ends up being one of the things that gets taken away because of him, kind of thing.
yeah.
So, but this is where Vite gets to help redeem himself, by kind of being responsible for saving the day at the end, basically dropping frozen squids on everybody and basically destroying True's device to try to get all of Manhattan's power. So I mean, I really don't have a whole lot to say about the last episode. Just a couple of little closing things, but I don't know. What are your guys' thought on the last episode?
I liked it. I do like that at the end, Angela and her family end up in the Dreamland Theater again.
Mm-hmm.
How everything kind of starts for William. I did like the idea of like True's just sort of piggybacking on what these white supremacists are doing, and their sort of ill-conceived plans, and she has actually sort of, as far as we know, perfected it. Again, we'll never know because she wasn't able to go through with it. But I did like the idea of, she opens up the sort of containment unit that Keen's in, and just this sort of red goo flows out of it. Just like, they didn't know what they were doing, or True sabotaged it maybe. But just this, sort of hubris of that, of thinking, well, I'm going to take Manhattan's power for myself,
It was probably one of the more touching, maybe the most touching moments or episodes with Cal and Angela. That moment that they have right as he's getting ready to die. So it made, there was a lot of action there that seemed like it made the episode go pretty quickly, but there were some really good parts that were more heartfelt than what we've seen in some of the other ones.
Like, whenever she's about ready to go out of the house, and Cal's like, "This is the moment that I fall in love with you."
Yes. Yes.
As far as
Go, Tyler.
Like, for me, as far as this last episode goes, I mean, I really liked it. I thought they ended it well. It kind of seemed a little anticlimactic in a way.
Oh,
I mean,
you're so wrong.
Like not completely.
Well,
To me, it's not as good an ending as what the original Watchmen was. but I still liked it. I thought all the, like where he fights the guys on the lawn, all the Rorschach, the
Seventh
imitators and stuff,
Yeah.
Calvary. Yeah, I thought that was all great and stuff. But what really got for me though for the ending, what stuck the landing, is where they've been teasing the eggs the entire series.
Yes, I was actually just ready to talk about
finally she goes in the kitchen and sees the carton of cracked eggs on the floor. There's one egg left, and she goes out to outside and cracks it open and eats it, thinking that because he said that he can put his energy or power into just about anything. And the fact that egg is like one of the early stages of life for a chicken and thing, kind of like if she consumes it, she could be reborn as a Manhattan kind of thing. And then you don't actually get to see her walk on water like he did. And they kind of leave it as, did she get his powers or didn't she? But the fact that they used I Am the Walrus by the Beatles, it's not the Beatles version, but I don't know who the version's by, but the whole I Am the Eggman thing, like that just it was great.
I feel like that ending is ambiguous until we get a second season.
Right, exactly.
So we probably, looks like we were not getting one.
Which makes me so sad.
Yeah, but I guess it's kind of whatever you want it to be.
So what is your opinion then, Dan? Did Angela walk on water or not?
If we get a second season, she did. If we don't, then she didn't.
Tyler, what do you think? Did she walk on water or not?
I mean, if she does or doesn't, it doesn't matter to me. I think she may. I think
Mike, what do you think?
I think she did. It's and that's my headcanon.
Yeah, I am 100% convinced that she walked on water. Now, here's the follow-up question for that though. The only thing she ever asked is like, could you put your power into something and I could walk on water? Does she have all of Manhattan's powers?
Yeah, you don't just give her the ability to walk on water and that's it.
That's all she asked for though.
That'd be such a cop out. No, it's. I feel like that's an all or nothing situation.
I don't think it has to be all or nothing.
Transferring his powers, that would be such a. Oh God, that would just undercut so much stuff. I think with their relationship, it just feels like he didn't understand what she was asking. If you're that literal with it.
Well, he's pretty literal.
Yeah, that's the thing. But yeah, that would. Yeah.
I don't know, Tyler, Mike, you got anything you want to add to that?
Well, no. The thing I have to ask about that is Manhattan's Endgame and Doomsday Clock was kind of similar, where he implanted his powers, I guess, in this Clark Kent kid and gave it to the Watchmen universe, is like to say, because his whole thing is like, every universe needs a Superman. So I'm going to sacrifice myself and put my power into this small boy so they can have a Clark Kent Superman. So
I don't count Doomsday Clock as part of this Watchmen universe.
Yeah.
Well, no, but the similarities kind of on how they ended.
Yeah.
Were kind of similar.
Yeah.
But you don't really know if she does have his power. I mean, I would assume that's, I would assume she would.
What if it was the wrong egg? What if it was one of the eggs that broke on the floor?
Well, that I can say I'm pretty confident that it wasn't. It was very deliberately the one egg that was left. So.
His power, she gets salmonella poisoning.
Yeah.
Just that's the next season. It's just her and she goes bleh, and just pukes all in the pool.
But it's all blue. One thing I wanted to point out with the ending is, we get something we've kind of wanted since the original comic series at the end, where Laurie and Looking Glass arrest Adrian for what he did at the end of the original Watchmen story. So he does, we get sort of some justice with that. But I feel like maybe that's not thematically in step with the Watchmen universe. I feel like that's maybe a little more hopeful ending than we got, sort of with the original series. because he got away with it in the comic at the end. And again, kind of going back to Doomsday Clock, that was a bigger issue where that kind of came out, and we didn't really have that in this show. It's just a select few people that know what he's done. And, I think there's a better argument to be made here in this show that what he has done has worked. So do the powers that be actually prosecute him and put him away? Especially after the world thinks he's dead for so long anyway, or do they just kind of continue the cover-up, of what he's done?
Well, that's fodder for a follow-up season if they ever get around to it. So I'm sorry, Tyler, I can't read that.
Well, it looked like Atchison was red flagging us about something, so I didn't want to interrupt the convo.
Yeah, I think he said he has to step away, if I understood the message correctly. So, Mike, you got any last things you need to say before you have to go? You're muted. Mike, you're muted.
It's muted, of course. Yeah. I said I want to try to find this online somewhere, this whole series, because it's not a Best Buy anymore. Tyler must have took the last copy.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, this is one of those series that it's so much fun to talk about. So this has been a blast.
For sure. Anything Watchmen in general. I've told Mike a while back, you could have a book club and talk about Watchmen every time you get together, and you're always going to have something to talk about. It's just that good of a story in a universe, in my opinion.
Well, do we need to wrap this up so that Mike can be here at the very end?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Bring up, really?
I think I'm pretty much gone through all my notes. So,
Yeah,
Dan, why don't you start taking us out?
All right. Yeah, so I think that's it for this time. Again, just want to remind everybody that we've got coming up on August 29th, we've got sort of the mini-con parking lot sale going on at the store at Campus Comics. And that's at 816 East Main Street, Suite B in Carbondale. So just come by then. We'll have a lot of stuff going on. And again, that's also Record Store Day. So Plaza Records, they're down from us, will be doing some stuff too. Scott, where can everybody find you at online if they want to stalk you?
All right, birdcomics.com, burgcomics.com, and I will be at the Minicon on August 29th as well with a couple of tables of books and who knows what else. Tyler?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, but I usually typically keep it private. You might be able to see me at the store on most Saturdays. That's usually when I try to make it in. And I'll be in on the 29th. I've got a whole bunch of key issues I'm going to be selling. Going to have some other books for sale and a lot of statues and collectibles and stuff. So I'll be there hanging out pretty well most of the day. So that's where you can find me.
And Mike Atchison 5 on Twitter. If you tweet at me, I'll see it.
And this is Dan Brown. You can find me online at Detective651 on Twitter, Instagram, and TeePublic, where right now we're running our back-to-school sale, so you get some fun stuff for a little cheaper right now. And you can find me at the store on most Saturdays, and I will probably be there too on the 29th. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.
So Tyler, if you want to say something clever now for the after credits, now is your opportunity.
Yeah, you would.
That's my password for this Skype account I created.
I'll be sure and put that as the recording part.
Yeah, don't put that because they're probably hacking my Skype.
There, exactly.
Got some more people on here. We did.
We got Skype on.
The Russians know.
They already know. It doesn't matter. They already know.
Yeah. They knew before I knew. And Russia. in Russia, we create password for you.